A Canadian millionaire sold his entire empire for $1.7 million on a Tuesday afternoon. By that same evening, he had vanished into the Toronto winter. No body, no ransom note, no trail, and Canada has never once answered for it. I first came across the Ambrose Small story buried in old Toronto newspaper archives. Just a short, almost dismissive paragraph about a man who disappeared on the most important day of his life. Most Canadians outside of Toronto have never heard of him, and that genuinely frustrates me because this is one of the most compelling and deeply unsettling disappearances in Canadian history. It happened in broad daylight, or close enough, on a busy street in the middle of one of Canada's largest cities, and nobody has ever explained it. Ambrose Small wasn't born into money. He clawed his way up from working-class Ontario, got his start in the theater business young, and spent decades building something remarkable. By the early 1900s, he controlled a chain of theaters across Ontario, London, Ottawa, Hamilton, and beyond. The crown jewel was the Grand Opera House on Adelaide Street in downtown Toronto. He wasn't just a theater owner, he was the theater owner, the man who controlled what Canadians saw on stage across an entire province. He was also, by most accounts, not an easy man. Ruthless in business, a gambler, someone who made enemies as easily as he made money. He had a wife, a deeply religious woman named Teresa, and by many accounts their marriage was complicated. But none of that matters on December 2nd, 1919, because that day should have been the best day of his life. It was, right up until the moment he stepped outside. On December 2nd, 1919, Small finalized the sale of his entire theater empire to TransCanada Theatres Limited, $1,750,000. His wife Teresa personally deposited the check that same afternoon. Small spent the rest of the day at the Grand Opera House, his Grand Opera House, meetings with lawyers, loose ends. By early evening, it was done. He walked out the door, and nobody ever saw him again. I want you to sit with that for a moment. This wasn't a trapper lost somewhere north of Thunder Bay. This wasn't a prospector who wandered into the bush and didn't come back. This was a wealthy, well-known, highly connected businessman who vanished from a busy street in downtown Toronto, in the middle of winter, in the middle of one of the largest cities in Canada. People don't disappear from downtown Toronto without a trace, unless someone very badly wants them to. And here's where his secretary enters the story, because this is where it gets genuinely dark. John Doughty was Ambrose Small's private secretary, trusted completely. An inside man who knew everything, the finances, the properties, the personal affairs. Shortly after Small vanished, investigators discovered something alarming. Someone had broken into Small's office safe. $105,000 worth of victory bonds. Gone. And Doughty had disappeared too. Police eventually tracked him down in 1920. He was living in Oregon, working under a false name, quietly building a new life. He was arrested, brought back to Canada, convicted of theft, served years in prison. But here's what the newspaper accounts always glossed over. Throughout his arrest, his trial, his entire imprisonment, Doughty maintained that he knew absolutely nothing about what happened to Ambrose Small. The theft? He admitted that. He took the bonds. But Small's disappearance? He denied it. Every single time. Until the day he died. A jury convicted him of stealing from a man who had already vanished. But nobody ever proved he did anything worse than that. Which leaves the question wide open. Because if Doughty didn't do it, then who? And the rabbit hole goes much deeper than you'd expect. There are 4 serious theories about what happened to Ambrose Small. I want to lay them out straight because none of them have ever been proven. Theory 1. Doughty killed him. Small discovered the stolen bonds. There was a confrontation. Something went wrong. Doughty disposed of the body and fled. It's the cleanest explanation, but no physical evidence ever supported it, and Doughty never confessed. Theory 2. Business enemies. Small had made a lot of enemies over decades in the theater industry. The TransCanada sale had its own complications. There were people who stood to lose. A man that ruthless, with that much money in play, attracts dangerous attention. This theory was investigated seriously at the time. Nothing was ever pinned on anyone. Theory 3. He ran. Small had been involved with another woman. He had $1.7 million in a deal that had just closed. His wife had the check, but the money was no secret. Some investigators genuinely believed Small had simply walked away from his entire life and started over somewhere else. It sounds too simple, but it would explain why no body was ever found. Theory 4, and this is the one I find most uncomfortable to say out loud. Teresa. Small's wife stood to inherit everything once he was declared legally dead. She hired private detectives. She pushed for the legal declaration. She seemed, to investigators at the time, unusually composed for a woman whose husband had vanished into thin air. No evidence ever implicated her. But that theory never fully went away either. And here's what I keep coming back to, the detail that won't let me go. Teresa Small died in 1935, 16 years after her husband vanished. She never found him, never got an answer. The Grand Opera House eventually came down, Toronto moved on, and the case, officially, is still open. 100 years later, a man who sold everything he'd built walked out into a December evening and was swallowed by the city. No remains ever found, no confession ever given, no explanation that fully holds together under pressure. $105,000 in stolen bonds, a secretary who served time and never talked, a wife who inherited everything and died without answers, a city that forgot. What really gets me, and I've thought about this a lot, is the timing. He didn't disappear before the sale. He didn't disappear a week later. He disappeared on the exact day the deal closed, the exact day the money changed hands. That's not a coincidence. That's a statement. Somebody knew exactly when to act. And Canada has never once held anyone responsible for it. The case of Ambrose Small is still officially unsolved. No body, no confession, no answer, a man who built an empire from nothing, sold it on a Tuesday, and walked into the dark. So I'll ask you directly, what do you think happened to Ambrose Small? Was he murdered? Did he run? Or is the truth something nobody's thought of yet? Tell me in the comments. This case deserves to be talked about. And if you want more Canadian history they never taught you in school, you know where to find it.